everyone, welcome back to ZTalks, where I talk about books, TV shows, and movies that relate to history or classic literature. And today we are here to delve into the classic literature side of the podcast once again. And this time we are doing a book that is honestly a bit controversial because everything I've heard about this book has either been really good reviews or really bad reviews. So you must know that we are here to talk about The Catcher in the Rye by JD Salinger. And boy, are we going to dive into it. So let's get to it. So, what is The Catcher in the Rye actually about? Because before I read this book and I asked people about it, I always got a mixed perception of the plot. Some people told me it's kind of like coming of age. Others are saying that it's about a guy that's running away from school. Others are saying, it's just about some whiny teenagers. So all of these mixed reviews and perceptions kind of made me entirely curious as to what this book was actually about. And when I read it, I was like, it's complicated, but also not that complicated. Because The Catcher in the Rye actually centers around a central character called Holden Caulfield. He is a 16-year-old kid, and we drop into the novel with him being kicked out of high school. And he gets kicked out a week before Christmas break. So he is just milling around, nothing to do, and the right thing to do would be to tell your parents that you're getting kicked out of high school, but he decides to leave the high school dormitory early and to arrive at his parents' house on a Wednesday, 2 days after the school would have told his parents that he actually got kicked out, which they would have done on the Monday. So he actually has the whole weekend to himself. And he decides, I'm going to go to New York. So we follow the journey of Holden going to New York. But actually, the journey of him going to New York and being in New York actually reveals a lot about his person and his character. And some people, as I've said before, might have told you that this story is about a whiny teenager because as he's in New York, he's constantly complaining about all the people and everyone around them and calling them phonies. But we actually realized, and I actually realized, that this book is actually not about a whiny teenager. It is actually about a teenager who is struggling with grief. Because as we move through the journey of Holden running away from school, we actually find out that he's running away from his past, his problems. He had a brother that passed away when he was just 13. And he is compartmentalizing and struggling to get over or to cope with the gravity of his brother's death, and also struggling to find connection. A lot of the book, as we travel through his journey in New York, follows him trying time and time again to connect with other people around him, trying and failing because his character exhibits an obnoxious air and attitude where he purposely pushes people away from him, and he does it as a cry for help, but also as a way to draw attention to himself, where he's purposely pulling you away, but he doesn't want you to pull away. He wants you to notice what's wrong. So on the surface, you might see a whiny teenager, which I don't agree with, because beneath the surface is actually a story about a kid that is struggling with grief. And as I read this book, I kept on thinking to myself that I've never read a book such as this. Well, I've read coming of age stories before, but I've never read ones where it actively pushed you to dislike the main character. Well, not really dislike, but it doesn't want you to like them either, but it kind of pushes you to have to empathize with them and understand them in their literally time of a mental spiral, because this book is actually what that is. You meet Holden in a time where he is spiraling in his journey of entering into adulthood. And I figured out that this whole journey kind of actually reflects the author. So, the author of this book is JD Salinger, and he actually influences the writing of this book a lot. I've read books before where the story was written, but you didn't get much of a feel or a sense of the author. But this book, you can feel the weight of the author through the pages. And it's because this book is actually semi autobiographical. Because our author, JD Salinger, actually took 10 years of his life to write this book. Now, I know that might come as a surprise to some people that have actually read Catcher in the Rye and might have came away with the opinion that this book might have been hastily written or might have been written with the intention to just be controversial or just purposely polarizing due to the language that it uses. Also, disclaimer, this book does have a lot of cursing in it because he is going through such a turbulent time in his life and a time that he was mentally spiraling. So, because of that whole aspect of the book, a lot of people might have come away with that opinion. But as I said, this book took nearly a decade to write. And a majority of it was actually written during Salinger's service in World War II. And this correlation or this overlap of Salinger serving in World War II and the majority of the book being written at that time actually had a profound effect on the character of Holden, because Salinger, if you know anything about World War II, he actually participated in D-Day. Now, D-Day, really serious, whole different topic that we can do a whole episode on, but just know it's a really traumatic experience that he went through. And in addition to participating in D-Day, he also saw concentration camps, specifically the concentration camp at Dachau. So these experiences that Salinger went through during the war had a profound effect on him as a person. So much so that he actually checked himself into a hospital in Nuremberg for treatment because he feared for his mental state. And this vulnerability and this profound shift that these experiences in the war had on him as a person and his outlook on life, which became a bit critical and a bit pessimistic, also had its influence on the character of Holden, because we can see Holden as a character actually being critical of the world. And one of the running themes in the book is that he sees anything attached to adult life or adulthood as phony. And it's because he's struggling to cross over from a period of adolescence into a period of adulthood. And this struggle to cross over also reflects the struggle that Salinger also faced to cross over from a life of participating in war and shifting from that pessimism about life to shifting to a life of normalcy post-war and trying to see the beauty in things and not being critical and carrying this weight of loss for his fallen friends with him through life every day. And it's also reflected in the character of Holden again, where he's also trying to figure out how to move through everyday life without carrying the weight of the loss of his brother with him every day. So the character of Holden directly reflects the author JD Salinger, albeit in different scenarios and in different ways, but the themes of loss between both of their lives and the outlook of pessimism and the criticalness of just change is something that runs through both him and the central character. Now, what's interesting about this book as well is the time period that it was published in, which is 1951. Now, if you know anything about this time period, you know that this was post World War II. So Salinger was actually just exiting the war and just transitioning back to normal American way of life. And when he published this book, it was published at a time where America was trying to be stable and they were experiencing an economic boom. This was a time when everyone was trying to, just bury the past. They've just gone through an economic depression in the 1930s, World War II, and they were like, this is a time when America needs stability. We need good old American values, morality, and there's a lot of emphasis on social norms and the nuclear family. Dad goes to work, mom stays home, and the kids go to school because no longer do kids have to go to work right after high school or to be in the army because they need to go to war. This is a time when kids are actually expected, you can have a life and actually go to higher education, such as college. So when this book was published, it actually went against everything that was being pushed at the time in America. Because this book, as I kind of mentioned before, has a lot of profanity. The whole thing is always cursing, always alluding to sexual anything, actually. He's always bringing up sex. And at this time, a child, remember, he's 16, using profane language, getting kicked out of school, which is not what people wanted at that time. They actually wanted you to go to school, much less stay in school. And to be always referencing sex, it was, to say the least, controversially accepted at the time that Salinger released it. And honestly, it's still controversially accepted today. Because if you know anything about The Catcher in the Rye and its place in literature, you will know that it has been banned so many times. Literally, the first recording of The Catcher in the Rye being banned was actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1960, after an 11th grade teacher was fired for assigning the book to his class. And that was just in 1960 that the book was banned. The book is still banned in several states in the US because of its allusion to sexual occurrences and for having profane language. And the book, I can't even count how many times the book has been banned or challenged overall throughout history because of the strong themes in it. But I feel like a lot of people, besides all of these strong themes, they kind of, missed the central point of the book, which is a kid struggling with loss. And the result of that are these strong themes because all of this profanity and constant allusion and reference to sex is because he is struggling. And this is him having a mental spiral. Therefore, this book represents the chaos of his mind and the chaos of his life because it is presented from his point of view. Therefore, it is an internal monologue. So it will also reflect his instability. Therefore, we have such strong themes. Now, overall, in terms of my rating for the book, because of everything that I have said, I feel like I can't give it anything less than 5 stars. Genuinely, I liked the book, and it's not that I am jumping for joy and loving and dying for these themes in the book. It's generally because This book forces you to be an empathetic person. It forces you to have to see past all of the surface level themes and to actually see the character in the vulnerable state that he is in the book. And because of what it asks of the reader, I can't help but give this book 5 stars. I feel like it was brilliantly written. And a lot of people might disagree with me for that and might hold their opinions. But me, I will stand firm. And yes, 5 stars. I think the book is great. But having said that, I don't think that everyone should read this book. I do think because of the strong themes, there is an age limit to this book. I don't think that anyone, I can't give a specific age to it, maybe say under 15 should pick up this book and have a casual read of it because of the strong themes and because I do think it takes someone that has a level of empathy or a level of not critical thinking, but just a level of reading between the lines and a grasp of the context of the book in order to fully appreciate and understand what the book is trying to convey and what the book is asking of the reader. So for that, 5 out of 5 stars, but as I said, not for everyone. So yeah, that is all I have to say today about The Catcher in the Rye. I generally like the book, and as I said, if you have the capability and the tools to read this book, definitely give it a try. I think that if you put yourself up to it and go in with an open and empathetic heart, that you will love it as much as I do. And with that, I will sign off and encourage you guys to listen to all the other episodes on your streaming platform of choice, whether it be Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, and to be sure to tune in for the next episode of ZTalks.